So with this in mind, I will share my counter story by focusing on 2 episodes of my family's history. And this will be the first time that I share them in public. The first will be an episode of my family's history from the past, and the second one will be from my family's history from the present, recent history. In the first, I will focus on the Nakba of 1948 in particular, and then I will share with you our story of my little family, the story of the exile that we have been going through since 2017, my wife Sarah, myself, and our 5-year-old daughter Sophia. So I am a Palestinian, an Arab, and a committed Christian. I was born in Jerusalem and grew up in Bethlehem. From my father's side, our family is Roman Catholic, or what we call Latin Catholic. And we belong to one of the 7 historical clans of Bethlehem, the Terajme clan, which makes us Bethlehemites. From my mother's side, we are Greek Catholics, or Melekite Catholics. And our family is originally from Shfa'amr, a city near Nazareth, which is home to one of the largest Palestinian Christian communities in the Galilee. On 14 July 1948, the Haganah, one of the military wings of the Zionist movement, which ended up forming the Israeli army, invaded Shfa'amr, the city where my grandfather Najib Ilyas lived until his late 20s. The invasion of Shfa'amr was part of a Zionist plan called Operation Dekel, which was led by a Canadian Jewish militant by the name of Ben Dunkelman. The aim of this operation was to occupy the lower Galilee region, including Nazareth and Shfa'amr, even though that region was part of the Palestinian state, according to the UN partition plan of 1947 that the Zionists celebrated only a few months prior to that. The invasion of Shfa'amr by the Haganah forced many Palestinian Christians to leave their houses and property. And among those who stayed, several were killed, among them women and children, and few were used as human shields to, quote-unquote, protect the occupying forces, a practice that actually goes back to the time of the British Mandate in Palestine. Many of those who were forced to leave Shfa'amr went to Lebanon and ended up living in refugee camps there, and others fled to nearby towns like Nazareth. My great-grandma Besma, however, left with her daughter Rose and her 3 sons Jalil, Jiryas, and Najib, my grandfather. They left in great haste and fear, most probably on the same day of the invasion of Shfa'amr, taking only the key to their house, documents of ownership, and few pieces of jewelry that my great-grandma owned. In Bethlehem, they lived as refugees. For the first several years, they stayed in small garages that local Bethlehemites offered them while receiving assistance from Dominican nuns. Now, the Palestinians who remained in Galilee were under a brutal Israeli military rule, which only ended officially in 1966. So in 1968, my grandpa was finally able to visit the city he grew up in. He traveled to Galilee with his sister Rose and with my mom, who was 8 years old then. They basically wanted to see the house they grew up in. But when they knocked on the door, a Jewish family greeted them. This Jewish family was now the occupier of my grandfather's house. My grandpa had another sister, Jalile, who lived with her husband and children in Akka, in Acre. Jalile sadly did not survive the Nakba. She was killed in 1948 when the Haganah poisoned the water supplies of Akka in preparation for their invasion of the city. And again, it's important to note that Akka was allocated to the Palestinians in the UN partition plan of 1947 that the Zionists celebrated. This has always been our historical narrative and my family's memory, that the Zionists poisoned the water supplies of Akka, which caused a typhoid epidemic that resulted in the death of my great-aunt Jalila. While preparing this counter story, however, I found a recently published paper, September 2022, in the Journal of Middle Eastern Studies by Israeli historians Benny Morris and Benjamin Kedar. The paper provides evidence from the Israeli military archive that the water poisoning of Akka was only the tip of the iceberg. In addition to the leveling of villages, the massacres, and the expulsion of Palestinians that accompanied the establishment of Israel in 1948, the Zionists had a top-secret operation much wider than Akka to poison Palestinian water supplies. Those operations, this operation, whose documentation was highly codified, as it escaped actually the current Israeli censorship, had the code name Shalach Lachmecha, cast thy bread, which is a horrifying misuse and weaponization of Ecclesiastes 11:1. Shalach Lachmecha al pnei hamayim, cast thy bread upon the water. According to Morris and Kedar, the aim of this operation was to use biological weaponry acquired from Europe and the United States to induce an epidemic among the Palestinians, to crush the Palestinian resistance, and to forbid the expelled Palestinians from coming back to their homes. Further, Morris and Kedar demonstrate that, quote, the decision to use the bacteriological weapons was taken at the highest level of the government and military, and was indeed steered by these officers with Ben Gurion's authorization, with the authorization of the first Israeli Prime Minister, unquote. This, in a nutshell, is the story of my family. And anyone who knows what befell the Palestinians in 1948 will know that this is a typical Nakba story, a story of expulsion, land, property theft, land and property theft, war crimes and atrocities. And the Nakba of Palestine, contrary to the hegemonic narrative, was not the result of a civil war or a national conflict between two peoples with the same rights to Palestine. Rather, the Nakba of 1948 was another episode of Western settler colonialism. And our collective memory of this episode is perhaps best captured by our songs, by our poems, and pieces of art. In a much cherished song, Ahmad Qabour laments the Nakba in the following words. I will first read them in Arabic and then provide my English translation. This is what Ahmad Qabour says. جند أتوا من بعيد دخلوا بيتي قتلوا ولدي قالوا ارحل مروا على جسدي زرعوا في القلب رصاصة نصبوا لي الخيمة دخلوا وأمتي تحلم قالوا ارحل. Soldiers came from far away, like the Polish Ben Gurion and the Canadian Ben Dunkelman. Soldiers came from far away. They entered my house, killed my son, and they told me, get out. They trampled on my body. They placed a bullet in my heart, and they constructed a tent for me. They entered while my people were asleep, in reference to the betrayal of the Arabs. They entered while my people were asleep. They said, get out, depart. This for me summarizes in a powerful poetic expression the story of the Nakba of 1948. Allow me now to change our mood a little bit and fast forward to around 65 years from the Nakba. In 2013, I came to the UK to study for an MA at London School of Theology. There, I met a beautiful young lady from Bolivia by the name of Sara Amestagui, who is here with us. I immediately fell in love with her, and I decided to ask her to marry me. However, before doing that, I was courageous enough to tell her that if she marries me, she will marry Palestine. To my great fortune and surprise, she joyfully agreed. So soon after we finished our studies, we traveled to her home city, Cochabamba, to get married. And from there, we moved to Bethlehem in 2015 and started working with Bethlehem Bible College. However, in 2017, merely 2 years after arriving in Bethlehem, we were forced to leave Palestine. And until now, until this very moment, we are not able to go back. We are technically living in exile here in the UK. waiting to be able to return. We are now part of the 7 million Palestinians that live in diaspora and exile across the world. We left Palestine on the 7th of May 2017 on a two-way ticket to Bolivia for a short visit that was supposed to last 3 months. Little did we know back then that this visit would extend to 6 years and counting, and with decreasing possibilities of return. So how did this happen? Israel maintains a system of discrimination and segregation that is partly encoded in 65 laws that discriminate against the Palestinians. Recently, Israeli and international human rights organizations have finally acknowledged that by declaring that Israel is an apartheid state. They were declaring the facts. According to those organizations, among those organizations are B'Tselem, an Israeli human rights organization, Amnesty International, a UK-based organization, and Human Rights Watch, whose headquarters is in New York. In the words of B'Tselem, Israeli apartheid is expressed as, quote, a regime of Jewish supremacy from the Jordan River to the Mediterranean Sea, unquote, i.e., a regime of Jewish supremacy in all historical Palestine, an area where currently 14.2 million people live, 50% of whom are Jewish and 50% Palestinians. In the West Bank, Israeli apartheid is implemented via procedures and laws that simply privilege the Jewish settlers against the original inhabitants of the land, the Palestinians. And one of these discriminatory laws concern marriage to internationals. So if I were a Jewish settler in the West Bank, in one of the Israeli settlements built on land grabbed from Palestinians, Israel would give my wife a spousal visa that will allow her to live with me without any problem. Or if we were, for example, a British Jewish family from London, for example, with no connection, by the way, whatsoever to Palestine, we would have been welcomed and even encouraged to live in an Israeli settlement in the West Bank under the Israeli so-called law of return, the Aliyah law. However, since I am a Palestinian, my international spouse is only issued a special kind of visa or permit through the Israeli military, under which she is neither allowed to work, nor drive, nor move freely, nor use the airport, among other restrictions. Further, this permit expires every 6 months and cannot be extended beyond 24 months. An Israeli officer once told Sarah's friend, a Dutch lady married to a Palestinian, "We give you this permit to visit your Palestinian husband. Once your permit expires, you need to leave." Actually, that officer told her also that she was unfortunate to be married to an Arab. She should have married a Jew. She won't have faced the problem. This is exactly what happened to us. Sarah's 24-month family visit finished. So we left the country not to be able to return. We left our newly constructed house, we lost our jobs, and had to start from scratch in a new place. Since then, we did every possible thing at our disposal to return. We appealed to the Israeli Ministry of Interior through a well-known Jewish lawyer. We had the support of respectable churches, including the Lutheran Church in the Holy Land and the Church of Scotland, which has a historical presence in Jerusalem. And at one point, we had a supporting letter from Philip Hall, the British Consul General in Jerusalem. We also personally contacted the Israeli military headquarters in Tel Aviv. We submitted a family reunification application. We contacted Israeli embassies in Latin America, and we submitted a special application through the Higher Committee of Church Affairs in Palestine. We did every possible thing at our disposal, but to no avail until now. Until this very moment, we are unable to return. Unfortunately, our story is not unique. I have many friends and acquaintances who are going through similar situations. Actually, in around 1 year, Bethlehem Bible College lost 4 key faculty and staff members due to Israeli apartheid policies. Our former head of the BA program, our former chaplain, my wife Sarah, who headed up the development and communications department, and myself, who was back then leading our online education program. So my final question is this: in the face of Nakba and apartheid, what should a Christian response look like? This is obviously one of the questions of the conference, and my time is running out, so I won't be able to give a full response. But allow me to offer a final testimonial. In 2010, I made a firm commitment to follow Christ, and I almost immediately left my career in computer science with Birzeit University to join a respectable Western mission organization in East Asia. My desire was to serve Jesus and to share the good news of the gospel in word and deed. After around 1 year of ministry with this organization, our director asked me to share a little bit from my experience as a Palestinian, with fellow missionaries in our regular prayer meeting. So I did that. I shared 5 specific prayer points in that prayer meeting. Afterwards, a group of friends that I used to minister with surrounded me. They told me I was political and wanted to correct my understanding of our Nakba and our history. And after around 2 hours or so of heated debate, one brother looked at me in the eye and told me, "But brother, Israel is a miracle of God." That was the first time in my life, imagine I was 2 years in faith, a baby Christian, first time in my life that I heard this statement. I was so shocked, utterly horrified. And I remember there was a cross in our chapel. I jumped to the cross, clinged to it, and started crying, "Lord, Father, hallowed be your name. Hallowed be your name." I still say the same prayer every time I encounter Christian Zionism, in all its forms and shapes, conservative or liberal, soft or hardcore. Father, hallowed be thy name. Thank you.